Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. They left me at a roadside diner off Highway 31. Just drove off. The taillights disappeared like they couldn't leave fast enough. I was 13. I still remember the waitress, maybe 40, with sunburnt shoulders and a tired smile, handing me a warm juice box and a crushed granola bar. Your mom paid for these, she said like it meant something, like it made up for everything. My name's Riley. I'm 24 now. I live in North Texas. But that day? That day, I lived in a stomach-churning mix of disbelief and rage. A few minutes earlier, I'd been in the back seat, arguing with my dad. I didn't even remember what started it. Something dumb, probably. But it ended with me raising my voice. My little brother had rolled his eyes. My sister muttered, "Always has to ruin everything." Then my dad pulled into the diner parking lot. "Out," he said. I thought he was kidding. I laughed, a dry, confused kind of laugh. I said out. My mom didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead. "You need to cool off and think about what you've done," she said. Then they drove off to the beach resort we were supposed to be heading to for the weekend. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. So I stood there, alone, in front of a rundown diner that smelled like burnt grease and old mop water. Backpack slung over one shoulder, juice box sweating in my hand. I was humiliated, sure, but underneath that, I was done. They didn't leave me with money, no phone, just that pity snack and the idea that I was the problem. Not them, me. I sat on a splintered bench out front and looked at the faded bus stop sign. Two options. One route back toward home, one headed west, out past the suburbs and into the stretch of land my dad always called nowhere. I stared down that second route for a long time. Then I got up and walked over when the bus pulled up, dropped in the coins I had from vending machines and school lunches and rode it without saying a word. I didn't cry. I didn't text anyone. I didn't look back. Because if they thought I was dramatic before, they hadn't seen anything yet. I was done begging to be seen, done trying to earn a seat in a family that treated me like luggage. Something to leave behind when things got inconvenient. And yeah, that was the day I left. For good. The bus took me as far as it could. A transfer station 3 towns over from anything familiar. I had no real plan, just a memory and a name. Ms. Tanya. She'd worked with my dad years ago, back when he was a mechanic before he moved into office work. She gave me a card once when I was 10, laminated even, with a picture of goats on it, and her address scribbled in Sharpie. "If you ever want to see real animals instead of cartoons," she said, "you come visit my ranch." I found that card in my backpack's front pocket. Had no clue why I'd kept it. Maybe something in me already knew I'd need it. It took 2 more buses and about a mile of walking down a gravel road in 90-something degree heat. By the time I got there, my shoulders were burning, my lips were cracked, and I was carrying everything I owned in one busted bag. Her place looked exactly how I imagined. Dry grass, fencing held up with wire and stubbornness, a tire swing, 3 goats in the front yard acting like they owned it. And behind it all, a crooked little farmhouse with chipping paint and a porch that sagged like it was tired. I didn't knock. I just stood there, staring at the screen door like it might open itself. Then it did. Tanya stepped out in rubber boots, holding a bucket, her gray hair tied back with a red bandana. She squinted at me for a second. Then her face relaxed. "You hungry?" she asked. I didn't say yes, just nodded. She didn't ask what happened. Didn't look for a parent behind me, just turned around and walked back inside. I followed, dragging dust and silence with me. Her kitchen smelled like old toast and cedar. She made grilled cheese in a pan that was older than me and handed me a glass of sweet tea that tasted like straight syrup. I ate with my elbows on the table and my guard still up. When I finished, I looked at her and said, "I just need a place to stay." For a bit, "Guest shed's got a bunk and a fan," she said. "Toilet's outside. Don't touch the breaker box." That was it. No big speech. No pitying stare. Just instructions and a bed. I slept so hard that night, I didn't dream. The next morning, she met me with a bucket of feed and a roll of gloves. "I can't raise a kid," she said, matter of fact, "but I can give you time." And work, I didn't thank her. Not because I wasn't grateful. I just didn't have the words yet. She put me to work with the goats first, morning feeding, water buckets, scooping droppings that steamed in the sun. Then she showed me how to weed her tiny garden, how to unjam a hose, how to patch a hole in a chicken wire fence using zip ties and grit. I got blisters, sunburn. One of the goats head-butted me into the dirt the first week. I laughed for the first time in months. She didn't hover, didn't ask where I was from or when I was leaving. She'd point, explain once, then walk away. I messed up plenty, but she didn't yell, just made me do it again. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. I like those days best. I slept in the shed with a fan blowing hot air at my face and frogs croaking outside the window. I stole soap from the outdoor shower, ate like every meal might be my last. I didn't miss my old life. Not for a second. The only time she looked at me sideways was when I flinched, loud noises, fast movement, yelling from the radio. She turned it down, never mentioned it. That whole summer, I never heard her say, "You should," or "Why didn't you?" She just kept showing up at sunrise, handing me gloves, saying, "Let's go." She didn't try to fix me. She gave me the space to uncoil, to stop being the version of myself that only ever existed in survival mode. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a problem. I felt like a person. When summer started to fade and the air stopped baking your skin off by noon, I braced myself. I figured Tanya would ask what my plan was. If I was heading home, if someone was coming to get me. She didn't. She just swapped the chore list to match the season. More tarp work, less watering, and left the shed key on the hook like always. When the school bus started rumbling by again in the mornings, I took a walk to the local high school and asked to register. The secretary raised an eyebrow at my paperwork. No parent signature, no transfer letter. I told her I was staying with a family friend, said it like I'd bite her if she disagreed. They didn't press, probably didn't want to get involved. Tanya didn't say anything when I brought home a free lunch form. She just passed it back signed. I bought a binder at the dollar store and used leftover goat feed bags to cover my books. I kept my head down, didn't try to make friends. I wasn't there for the social scene. A few weeks into the semester, I asked Tanya if I could start working afternoons. "I don't own you," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. "If you can juggle it, go for it." The local hardware store was hiring shelf stockers. I walked in with dirty sneakers, filled out the paper form, and told the manager I could lift 50 pounds and didn't mind cleaning up broken glass. He hired me on the spot. The pay was trash, barely enough to cover shampoo and school supplies, but it was mine. I came home with cracked hands and sore legs, and I liked it that way. No one handed me anything. I earned it. Tanya didn't micromanage. She just made sure I had enough to eat and didn't pass out in the heat. One night, I used too much soap in the outdoor shower and felt weird about it. Walked into the kitchen with my head low and mumbled, "Sorry if I went overboard." She looked up from slicing carrots. "You're not a burden. Stop acting like one." It hit me in the gut. Not because she was mean, because she said it like it was obvious, like she didn't need convincing. That night, I stared at the shed ceiling longer than usual. The words stuck in my ribs. I wanted to believe her. A few weeks later, my science teacher made us do a group project. I got paired with a kid named Jace who smelled like gasoline and talked non-stop. When he asked where I lived, I said, "Out on a ranch." When he asked who with, I said, "A friend." Then stared him down until he changed the subject. I wasn't ashamed. I was protective. This life was mine now. I wasn't about to let anyone poke holes in it. Tanya kept giving me space, but I started noticing the ways she looked out for me. If I came home late, a plate was covered on the counter. If I forgot to set my alarm, she knocked once on the shed door. Not loud, not nagging, just enough. She never went through my stuff, never lectured me about homework, never guilt-tripped me when I got quiet. It felt weird at first, someone giving without angling for something back. One Sunday, I sat on the porch watching the goats headbutt each other like idiots and said, "You really don't care that I haven't left?" Tanya sipped her coffee and said, "If I didn't want you here, you'd know." Simple as that, so I stayed. Kept working shifts after school, got good at stacking pallets and not slicing my fingers on cardboard. I used my paycheck to buy my own socks, notebooks, and cheap headphones from the gas station. At school, no one asked much anymore. I was the quiet kid who always smelled like hay and never missed a day. Teachers left me alone. That's how I liked it. One night, I passed Tanya in the hallway and asked if I could pay her back for the groceries. She gave me this look, eyebrows halfway up, mouth twitching like she was holding back a laugh. "Pay me back by not being an idiot," she said. That was the closest thing I ever got to a hug from her. And honestly, I didn't need more than that. The more days passed without her asking me to leave, the more I let myself breathe. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I wasn't flinching at every quiet moment, bracing for a guilt trip or a cold shoulder. I was still cautious, still twitchy around kindness. But I was learning how to stay. A few days after I turned 14, the calls started. The house phone rang during dinner. Tanya looked at the screen, raised an eyebrow, and slid it across the table toward me. It was my dad. I pushed the phone back without a word. She nodded once and turned back to her stew. Then came the emails. My sister's name in the inbox. The subject line said, "We're worried." Inside was a 2-paragraph guilt trip about how I'd scared everyone, how mom hasn't been sleeping, and how I was being cruel by dragging this out. She ended it with, "You've made your point. Now come home." I didn't reply. Next was a text from my brother. No greeting, just, "You're being dramatic." Grow up, I blocked the number. Tanya never asked what happened, never pressed. She saw my face each time, jaw tight, fists clenched, and kept her questions to herself. The most she said was, "Keep your head down and your feet moving." So I did. I picked up extra shifts at the hardware store on weekends. Started doing fence repairs for neighbors who heard I was handy. Saved every dollar. Bought a used laptop from a pawn shop so I could start learning things online. Budgeting, mechanical stuff, even how to file taxes. The more useful I got, the less I thought about them. But sometimes, late at night, lying in that shed listening to cicadas scream outside, I'd feel it crawling up my chest. That old voice saying, "You should answer. You should explain." Then I'd remember the diner, the heat off the pavement, that damn juice box, the way no one looked back. They left me. No one chased the car. No one stopped it. They just kept driving. So yeah, I ignored every message. One voicemail from my mom cracked a little, her voice thin, like she'd been crying. She said, "We just want you to come home. This has gone on long enough. You need to apologize so we can move forward." I stood in the garden with dirt under my nails and sweat on my back and deleted it without a second thought. I wasn't sorry. Not for leaving. Not for surviving. Not for growing teeth the second they showed me I didn't matter. Over time, the messages slowed. The anger burned off, and underneath was something worse. Silence. Not because they understood, because they ran out of patience. The last email I got from my sister just said, "Guess you've made your choice." Damn right I did. Tanya saw the shift in me before I did. One morning, she handed me a wrench and said, "You walk like someone who finally stopped begging." I didn't say anything, but I held that line close, replayed it in my head every time my chest got tight. I never blocked their emails completely. I left the inbox open like a wound, just to prove to myself that I didn't flinch anymore. I didn't respond, not once, not even to the messages pretending to care, especially not to the ones demanding I be the bigger person. They didn't get to ask me for grace, not after what they did. Tanya didn't offer advice unless I asked. She just made sure I kept my boots dry, kept eating, kept showing up. She never said, "I'm proud of you." But the way she let me carry my own weight said it for her. And in a way, I needed that more. They stopped trying to contact me the winter I turned 16. No texts, no emails, no calls on Christmas. Just quiet. I could finally breathe. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. If anything, it cleared space in my brain, made room for things that actually mattered, like learning how not to burn eggs or how to keep water from leaking under the sink. That faucet in the guest shed started dripping during the spring rains. Tanya handed me a flashlight and said, "Go figure it out." I watched a video on her old laptop, crawled under the sink, and twisted things until it stopped. It felt better than any A+ I ever got in school. I started writing lists, groceries, bills, supplies for the goats. I clipped coupons. I figured out which store marked stuff down at the end of the week. I stretched $20 like it was an art form. The first time I made it through a full week without borrowing anything from Tanya's pantry, I walked out of that shed feeling taller. I bought my own school supplies from the thrift store, used binders, pencil cases with someone else's name crossed out in marker. I didn't care. They worked. Same with clothes. I stopped caring about fitting in and started caring about getting through. Jeans that didn't rip, a hoodie that could handle ranch dust, shoes that wouldn't split open after one shift. I wasn't dressing for approval. I was dressing for war. Tanya taught me how to make a budget on a sticky note, how to file basic taxes, how to say no and not offer a damn explanation afterward. "You don't owe anyone a speech," she said, stirring her coffee. "You owe yourself a life that doesn't make you sick." I held on to that like a shield. One night, I decided to cook dinner for both of us. Nothing fancy, just roasted potatoes, frozen corn, and pan-fried chicken with way too much seasoning. I put the plates down and braced for her to fix something or laugh at the mess. She took one bite, raised an eyebrow, and said, "Now that's worth coming home to." I pretended to roll my eyes, but inside, I melted. I kept grinding, school, work, chores. I started getting good at being useful in ways that didn't show up on a report card. Hauling feed bags, rotating tires, balancing a grocery list against a paycheck with zero wiggle room. It wasn't glamorous. But it was real. Tanya never babied me. She didn't brag about me to neighbors or give out gold stars. What she gave me was room, space to grow sharp instead of broken. At school, kids still talked behind my back sometimes. I knew it. I didn't care. Let them whisper about the goat kid or the one who always wore the same boots. I was working towards something they didn't understand. I was becoming someone my old family never had the patience to wait for. Someone strong enough to stand on their own. Someone who could fix a busted fence, change their own tire, hold a boundary without flinching. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their calls. I didn't need their fake concern wrapped in sugar-coated control. I just needed to keep showing up. For myself, for Tanya, for the life we were building, one problem, one meal, one small win at a time. And little by little, the version of me they left behind, scared, needy, always second-guessing, faded into someone else entirely, someone I actually liked. I was 21 when Tanya collapsed on the porch. One minute, she was arguing with the goat over a feed bucket, and the next, she just dropped. No warning, no goodbye. The paramedics said it was a stroke. Fast, sudden, nothing I could have done. I stood in the ER hallway, holding her wallet and boots like they meant something, like they'd explain how the strongest woman I'd ever known was just gone. The funeral was quiet, barely a dozen people. Two neighbors from down the road, the old vet who used to patch up her animals, and a woman from her church who brought a dry-ass casserole and cried harder than I did. I didn't cry in front of anyone. Not because I wasn't wrecked, I was, but because breaking down in public always felt like asking for something, and I wasn't in the mood to need anything from anybody. After the service, I went back to the ranch alone. The goats bleated like they didn't notice anything was different. I fed them anyway. A week later, a lawyer showed up with a manila folder, wore a suit that didn't fit, and kept saying sorry for your loss, like he was trying to sell it. Inside the folder was a deed, her will, her signature in thick black ink. She left everything to me. The land, the sheds, the house, debt-free. No catch. No if, no when. Just mine. I stared at the paperwork while the lawyer kept talking. I didn't hear half of what he said. I was too busy holding my breath. I didn't expect it. I never once asked what would happen to the place. It didn't even cross my mind that she'd write my name on anything that big. I was still standing in the doorway when the lawyer left. Sun cutting across the porch. Wind blowing dust through the trees. Felt like the whole world was just holding still for a second, waiting to see what I'd do. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't even sit down. I just whispered, "Are you serious, Tanya?" Like she might answer from the yard. She didn't, so I got to work. The roof had a soft spot over the kitchen. I patched it. The back fence had been leaning for months. I replaced the posts one by one. I cleaned out the guest shed, pressure washed the porch, and hauled a decade's worth of rusted junk to the scrapyard. I fed the goats, watered the garden, paid the electric bill with money from my shifts at the feed store. There was no safety net now, no backup, no Tanya watching from the porch with coffee in hand, ready to catch me if I slipped. But I wasn't scared, not like I thought I'd be. I had the land. I had the skills. I had the stubbornness she built into me over 8 years of hard days and plain truths. And somehow, even with her gone, I didn't feel alone. I could still hear her voice when I overcooked dinner. "Your lucky goats can't file health complaints." I could still see her handwriting on the wall calendar in the shed, messy notes like, "Check pipe, probably leaking again." Her boots stayed by, the back door. I never moved them. I didn't need a family name or a birth certificate or some bloodline nonsense to prove I belonged here. Tanya already did that. With every meal, every job list, every quiet moment she let me be without pushing me to be better. She didn't just give me a house, she gave me a life I could hold on to. The first message came in 3 weeks after Tanya's funeral. No subject line, just, "We're so sorry to hear about your loss. We'd love to reconnect sometime." I stared at it like it might explode. There was no name attached, just a shared family email address I hadn't seen pop up in years. No mention of what they did, what they left me to crawl out of. Just sorry, like that patched over everything. I didn't respond. 2 days later, another one landed. This time, from my sister. "Hey, I got into nursing school. Tuition's crazy. Any chance you could help out?" No hello. No, how are you? Just the ask. I closed the email and went back to digging out a busted fence post on the west side of the yard. It was 90 degrees and the flies were brutal, but I'd take sweat and sore muscles over reading that crap any day. They didn't stop. My brother sent a message next. Saw online you inherited the ranch. That's incredible. Must feel good having something of your own, that was the subject. The body of the email just said, maybe it's time to let the past go. Let it go? They ditched me at a diner with a juice box. I built a life with dirt under my nails and no map. And now they wanted to act like it was just a rough patch? I didn't say anything. I didn't delete the messages either. I left them there like bones in the yard. Evidence. A week later, another one came in. This time it had some bite. You own land now. You're in a good place. We're still struggling. It'd mean a lot if you helped. I read it on my phone while stacking hay. My gloves were covered in dust. I remember wiping the screen with my sleeve, scrolling back up to reread that line. You're in a good place. Like that meant I owed them something. Like building a life with scraped knuckles and grief on my shoulders was just luck. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the one Tanya bought secondhand and repaired with wood glue, and wrote my first reply. It wasn't long. One word. No. I didn't sign it. Didn't explain. Just sent it and shut the laptop. The next morning, there was a missed call, then a voicemail. My mom's voice, soft and guilt-laced. We just want to talk. We miss you. We didn't know Tanya meant that much to you. I laughed out loud when I heard that part. Didn't know? Tanya was the reason I didn't crash and burn. The reason I knew how to live. She didn't have to love me. She just did. Without rules, without scorekeeping. They left me behind and called it parenting. She gave me a bed, a plate, and a path forward, and called it nothing at all. Later that day, I got another email. It said, family helps each other. You're not acting like family. I didn't respond. Because they were right. I wasn't acting like family, not their kind anyway. I was acting like Tanya. She didn't owe me anything, and she still showed up. They owed me everything and left. So yeah, I ignored the next message, and the one after that. I kept doing the work Tanya taught me. Fix what's broken, keep moving, and never go back to what made you small. It was a Saturday, hot, quiet. I was out front tightening the hinges on the goat pen gate when I heard tires crunching on gravel. Not one car. 3. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and felt my stomach drop. The lead car parked right in front of the house. The others boxed it in like they were planning to stay a while. Doors opened. My mom stepped out first, dressed like she was heading to church. Pale sweater, pearls, like that made her the victim. My dad followed, holding a manila envelope. My sister climbed out of the back seat with her arms crossed like this was some courtroom drama. My brother was last, didn't even look up from his phone. And then, stepping out of the third car like some damn surprise guest on a talk show, was my Aunt Linda. I hadn't seen her since I was 10. She used to give me socks for Christmas and complain about the attitude problem I was developing. I stayed by the front gate and didn't move. They started walking up the path like they owned it. We just want to talk, my mom said, hands out like I was the one being unreasonable. You live alone, my sister added. You don't need all this space. My dad stepped forward, holding out the envelope like it was some kind of peace treaty. We looked into the deed. There's a lot of equity here. Tanya would want you to help family. That name out of his mouth made something inside me snap. I stayed behind the gate and gripped it tight with one hand. Turn around, I said, steady, while you still have the option to leave with dignity. My mom's eyes filled instantly. Riley, honey, don't do this. We miss you. I shook my head once. You miss what I was. You don't know who I am now. She sniffed and reached out like that was supposed to mean something. I didn't move. My dad tried to hand me the envelope again. It's just information, he said. If you'd look at the numbers, I don't want your numbers, I cut in. I want you off my land. My sister shifted her weight and gave me that look. The one that says you're being cruel. I'd seen it before. She'd worn it when they left me at that diner and blamed me for it. My brother finally looked up from his phone. You know this is insane, right? You're out here playing farm girl while the rest of us are actually doing something with our lives. I smirked. I built a life from nothing. You inherited yours. There's a difference. He rolled his eyes and stepped back. Coward. My aunt finally spoke. You're being ungrateful. We're your family, I tilted my head. Family doesn't strand a kid at a roadside diner. That shut her up. We stood there in silence, heat rising between us, goats bleating somewhere behind me like they could sense the tension. No one moved. Then, like a damn movie, Brenda came around the corner. She was my neighbor across the field, retired cop, 70-something, hard as nails. She wore cargo pants, mirrored sunglasses, and had her German Shepherd Duke on a leash. She saw the group, saw me behind the gate, and headed over slow. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, voice sharp as gravel. My dad straightened like he suddenly remembered what boundaries were. "No, ma'am. Just a family discussion." Brenda raised an eyebrow. "You discussing from this side of the gate?" No one answered. Duke let out a low growl. Brenda looked at me. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. They were just leaving. That was the final push. My mom turned first, covering her face like the tears gave her some kind of moral high ground. My sister followed, shaking her head like I'd failed her. My dad hung back a second, dropped the envelope on the ground, and gave me one last look, a mix of disappointment and offense, like I'd robbed him. I didn't pick it up. They got in their cars and left in the same formation they arrived. Not peacefully, but they left. Brenda waited until the dust settled. Then she walked over and patted the gate. "Proud of you, kid," she said. "Most people would have folded." "I don't fold for people who abandon me," I said. She nodded. "Good. Don't start." I watched the last car disappear down the road. I didn't shake, I didn't cry, I didn't feel small. For the first time in my life, I held the line, and no one crossed it. That night, I sat on the porch with a bowl of soup in my hands. Tanya's recipe: onions, canned tomatoes, broken pasta, and way too much black pepper. The kind of soup that didn't look like much but somehow made you feel full. I watched the sun sink behind the shed, light fading into that soft orange glow that always made the land look like it was holding its breath. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. I'd built this stillness, fought for it, bled for it, and now it wrapped around me like armor. A few days after they left, I started planting herbs in old soup cans by the window. Basil, rosemary, thyme. Nothing fancy. Just enough to smell like a kitchen again. I named the loudest goat Raisin, mostly because she had a wrinkled ear and chewed like she was judging me. She followed me around like she thought she owned the place. Maybe she did. I picked up extra hours at the feed store. The owner, a guy named Clay with 3 missing teeth and a bad back, taught me how to balance inventory and fix the register when it jammed. He didn't ask questions, paid in cash, handed me keys like I'd been there forever. I wasn't rich, I wasn't important, but I was mine. Every scraped knuckle, every shovel full of dirt, every single night I crawled into bed sore but steady. That belonged to me. Sometimes they still emailed. "Hope you're well. Your sister's graduating soon. Just thought we'd check in. Still think about you." I read them. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been shown. They made their choices. I made mine. And every day I kept showing up for this life. This ranch, this peace, this hard-earned quiet. I put another mile between who I was and who they tried to make me. I didn't need a reunion. I didn't need closure. I needed to plant things. To feed animals. To work my shift. To come home tired, not hollow. I needed to keep living. And keep healing. It had been 2 years since they showed up at the gate. No more voicemails, no more guilt-wrapped emails. No one swinging by, with fake concern or paperwork in hand. They finally got the message. I fixed the porch swing last fall. New chains, sanded wood, fresh coat of stain. It creaked just right now. The kind of sound that settles your bones instead of grinding your nerves. I repainted the kitchen over the winter. Soft gray, same as Tanya's old coffee mug. It felt cleaner, quieter, like breathing with the windows open. Every paycheck, I put a little aside. I was saving to build a small greenhouse behind the shed. Something simple. Wood frame, clear panels, enough space for seedlings, and some tomatoes. A place to grow things on purpose, not just because they survived the neglect. Some mornings, I'd drive into town for supplies and I'd pass that diner. The same one they left me at when I was 13. I never stopped. Not once. Didn't even slow down. Used to be, I'd catch myself wondering, did I do the right thing? Leaving, cutting them off, building this whole life out of stubbornness and silence? But those questions don't come around much anymore. Now, I wonder something else. I wonder why I ever thought their love was something I had to earn. Why I twisted myself in knots for people who made me beg just to be treated like a person. That girl they left on the bench outside the diner? She had nothing but a granola bar and a decision to make. No map, no safety net, just grit. And yeah, she was scared. But she got on the bus anyway. She survived. More than that, she grew. Now she's got land beneath her boots, soup on the stove, and a goat named Raisin who refuses to shut up. She's got walls she painted herself and a porch that creaks the way she likes. She's not perfect, but she's free. And she owns every piece of this piece, so no, I'm not going back. Not ever.